Everybody to the town hall with the Trumbull delegation. Thank everybody for coming out today and spending some time with us. Hear about what you think we should be doing next in our session coming up in January. And I'm Ben McGordy, state representative from the 122nd district. I represent a little bit of the Trumbull area, Stratford, and most of Shelton. I've been appointed this year as assistant leader, and my new committees this year is public safety, regulations review, and banking. And with me today, I've represented Dave Vertigolano and represented Laura Devlin, and if they'd like to introduce themselves.
Thanks, Ben. So hi, everybody. I'm Laura Devlin, proudly representing the 134th district, which in Trumbull is the current District 4. And I also represent part of Fairfield as well. As we are just kicking off, getting ready for this year, generally we will host a coffee session, which isn't possible during COVID. It's great to see some new people here who generally don't come to our coffee sessions, but it's an opportunity for us to hear from you as we prepare legislative proposals for the coming session. So to understand what our constituents are really interested in. I am pleased this session to be appointed by our House Minority Leader as a deputy leader. And I've been reappointed to our the same committees that I've participated on, which are finance, revenue, and bonding, transportation, and also education.
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. This is Dave Vertigolano. I'm the state representative from the 123rd district, which is about 2/3 of Trumbull districts, current districts 1, 2, and 3. This year, I've been appointed senior whip, which is a position that I had before. I am ranking on general law, a committee that I hold near and dear, and I do a lot of work with and I enjoy. I'm also on regulation review, labor, and I'm on the screening committee, which can be important at times, where we screen bills before they're brought to the floor. So I'm sure the three of us can answer any questions anybody has, but if there is legislative suggestions or ideas that you guys think we should be putting forward, this sort of noon on a Tuesday is a bit of a trial run. If it goes well, we could all, do it, I guess. We'll do more of these leading up to session when we find out what the actual rules are about session, whether we're all going to meet in person, we're going to meet virtually, or if the governor extends his executive order powers, which is a distinct possibility, and then we're recessed for another period of time. We're still a little bit in limbo, but the work has to begin. So welcome, and I look forward to hearing from everybody.
I think our first select woman from Trumbull is on the call, so that's great. Glad to have you here, Vicki. Anything you'd like to offer?
I'm sorry, I just need to unmute myself. I'm here, to listen, and if anybody has any questions, from the town, I'd be glad to answer them.
Awesome.
We will work together for our Trumbull residents. So I'm glad to see that you guys are doing this, and always happy to be a part of the discussion.
Great. I think we promised a little bit of a COVID update to start, so maybe we could start there and then we'll just open it up. We did receive some questions in advance, and you can ask, I think, are questions going through the chat, you guys? How are we doing that? All right, well, I guess we'll figure that out when we actually get there. But overall, from a state perspective with COVID, obviously it is top of mind and the number one thing that we're all confronting and touching everything from, our economy, clearly, people's lives and health, and also how we're educating our kids. Statewide, our rate is a little bit over 6%, which is quite high. The governor at this point is not making any changes, although he has indicated a desire to stay aligned with the region. Governor Cuomo has indicated that if things don't stabilize from a hospitalization rate in New York, that he will reduce restaurant in-person operations to 25%. So if he did that, I would anticipate that the state would follow. Testing is really important, and testing continues to be made available. One of the things is particularly related to travelers. So hopefully people aren't traveling, although we do have a tri-state sort of agreement But should someone, particularly during this holiday season, Bradley Airport now has testing facilities. I think they just opened one by the rental car area. There's also one in the baggage claim. Anybody who is coming into Connecticut needs to have a negative test within 72 hours of arrival or quarantine for the full-on days. Trumbull remains in the red, as does the majority of our entire state. So that is, I think, kind of where we are on things. Anything, Ben or Dave, that you would want to add? Anything you guys want to add?
No, I think everybody's pretty aware what's going on with the,
Okay.
but we don't
All right.
have any special information that you can't get from the governor's daily press conference. So
Yeah.
I would imagine, unless somebody has a specific question about COVID, that I would assume everybody's up to
I think
date.
our first select woman does.
Got to unmute it.
You,
Okay, I just wanted to add just one additional piece about testing information. The town now, in conjunction with Griffin Hospital, has opened up a testing site once a week on Tuesdays from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. or 3:30 p.m. And that's going to be at Unity Park. So
I
every
drove by that this
Tuesday,
morning.
yeah, every Tuesday, I believe for the next 8 weeks, we will have that testing site open for Trumbull and surrounding communities.
Do they need an appointment, or
No,
do they have to pre-register, or they do it when they get there?
I believe you just do it when you get there.
and no doctor's order required, just show up?
I believe it's just show up. I'll check the flyer, but this was, we just finalized all of this yesterday. But it was up and running this morning. So that's
Yeah,
good news for the
This
community.
morning, happy to promote that. Good.
Thank you. That's
Yeah.
great.
A rapid test or the 2-3 day one? Do you know? You're muted again, Vic.
No, I believe it's the regular PCR test.
Okay, good.
And the results, I think they said, maybe they're being optimistic, between 24 and 48 hours.
Yeah.
So.
Good. That's a good thing.
So the only other thing I'd add before we jump into questions is related to this session. The upside and the downside is that it's likely we will be in Hartford not very often. The upside to that is that it's really difficult to get engagement from a lot of people, whether it is understanding, issues before our committees or participating in public hearings where you may have to wait all day and get called at 1 a.m, or you never know, and waiting around in the Capitol building. I wish there was a better way for that, but what we probably will be doing is operating a lot from a Zoom perspective. And CTN, I hope, will be able to cover more activities than what they're limited to in the physical structure of the Capitol or the LOB for committee activities and public hearings. So hopefully this will enable a lot more stakeholder and citizen participation to understand what is being discussed, to participate and share your views. So I hope that it is actually a positive moving forward. And I will end with that.
Okay, so who do we have out there that'd like to ask a question or give us some idea what's going on? I see Barbara's waving her hand. Can we unmute Barbara? There we
Hi.
go.
I have some bill suggestions.
Great.
One thing is I have, 4 kids and in different grades, and there should be some sort of student bill of rights in terms of monetary, because it's a willy-nilly. All these students and parents have to agree to all these COVID regulations, but there's no monetary refund of any sort of changes or abrupt things that we haven't signed up to when we first signed up for tuition. And, I'm lucky I'm in a situation where I can absorb the cost, but many people can't. So I just wanted to propose some sort of like protections monetary refunds or anything that the universities or schools that you pay money for, that you get your money back in some way, because it can't just be a free-for-all for these schools.
So you're not talking about, obviously, our public school system, you're talking about secondary and education. That
Anything that you pay money for.
Okay.
You know, it's like university students, if like they get kicked off for quarantine, they should actually get a reimbursement for housing, certain things like that, because they're not getting what they paid for. And even for businesses, I know, Dave, you own restaurants, should be some sort of monetary something where you have to abruptly change your business. You should be able to, you know, get some sort of like remedy or something. I know it's a state of emergency and something, everything falls under this general umbrella of state of emergency, but you know, the monetary piece for education, I think is a big one.
And that is a problem. I did hear that from several other parents. My daughter just graduated college last year. So we know what it's like. You know, they belong to a sorority and they belong to different organizations. They pay the tuition, they pay for the meal plan, they pay for the lodging, but they're not taking advantage of it. Yeah, there is a problem with not getting a refund or a discount for those services that you're paying for. But I'm sure something will come out pretty soon on that, because a lot of people are in the same boat as you.
Yep.
And I just want to say that we do have a chat button at the bottom of the screen. If you're sitting there and you think of something, you can just put it in the chat. We'll try and answer those as we go along as well. And go ahead, Mark.
And then one other question, I mean, I have a bunch of bill suggestions. I can always email them too. But in terms of the election, obviously that's the buzz around the country because of the whole election, you know, frauds and whatever. Is there anything being done in Connecticut to investigate what we use in terms of equipment, software, and all that kind of stuff? I know we're not one of the important swing states. Is there anything being done in Connecticut just to kind of do an audit of what we use in Connecticut?
So I'll jump in on that. As far as I know, there have not been any changes to, you know, what we use in terms of our voting in Connecticut. Everything is done by machine, and results are submitted via the state website, a particular portal to the Secretary of State's office. And there haven't been any changes in that regard. Connecticut, you know, our elections, I think, went very well, considering versus the primary, where there were a lot of issues. And I think part of that is putting the responsibility for the elections where it has been and where it belongs, which is in our town clerks and not at a third-party mail house that was sending things out. I think what it does show, and it has been honestly a frustration of mine since my days serving on the government administration and election committee, is that, you know, there's lots of good ideas about things that we should do or how we should advance or how we should change our voting or whatever we should do. But the ground game isn't there. And by that, I mean the infrastructure. And I think too often we run to do the next thing without getting the fundamentals in place so that things can run smoothly. Whether in this case, it's looking at the voter rolls, making sure that, you know, decisions that are made that our registrars and clerks are going to have to implement, they are given the time and the training and the resources to do that. And it's been interesting. I have served as a town-wide monitor for elections, and sometimes, honestly, well, let's just say there could be a lot of improvements in terms of how things are issued from the state and how they're received on the ground. And there's a ways to go to do that. But before we jump on, let me just recognize Senator Tony Wong has joined us. Senator Wong has had the honor, as I do now, of representing District 4 in Trumbull and is currently my state senator. So welcome, Senator. If you're speaking,
thank you, Representative Devlin. I just wanted to pop in to say hello and support these great state reps that represent Trumbull and to listen in and get some insights. So thank you for recognizing me, Representative Devlin.
Absolutely. I know Trumbull's still near and dear to your heart.
But
Next question, Laura?
I'm sorry, Ben, are you reading off the questions?
I don't have any questions. All I was doing is asking for anybody out there raise their hand up. and ask a question, or you can use the chat button down below. So we have Doug's is raising his hand there. How are you, Doug? Hold on, we got to unmute you there for a second, Doug. Hold on. Can we unmute? There we go. Good.
Okay. Yeah, the chat is only letting us send messages to Brian Sunday. So that's why you're not seeing any chat questions, I think. I submitted a question, but it only allowed me to send it privately to Brian. So.
Okay. All right. So he's listening, and hopefully we'll get that.
Okay, but I'll just ask my question.
Sure.
I mean, I just say thanks for doing this. I don't envy any of you going up to Hartford or doing it virtually. This session is going to be tough. Aside from COVID, I have a question about what ideas you guys have for replenishing funding for our special transportation fund. That is going to be depleted fairly shortly. Our roads are continuing to crumble. We don't want another Mianus River Bridge failure, but I don't see any other way around funding this without some new revenue stream. So I'm just curious what you guys are thinking on that, because it's it's holding our state back. Our crumbling infrastructure is definitely holding our state back. So just like to hear your thoughts on that.
So I think our discussions on that are going to be forthcoming. First of all, let me just set the record straight, because we hear the words Mianus River Bridge frequently, and in no way are our roads at any risk of any comparison to that awful tragedy that occurred back several years ago when the Special Transportation Fund was created. The two fastest growing expenses in the Special Transportation Fund are our subsidies for rail and for buses, and the pension and healthcare costs for DOT and DMV workers. So we actually have a meeting on Thursday where we will be meeting with OPM and looking at the fiscal accountability report, which does share some detail about our overall fiscal situation and the Special Transportation Fund. So I think what we need to look at, I don't endorse leading with taxes. I know there's a lot of talk right now about increasing the gas tax. I think we really need to look at, and I haven't seen it yet, I won't be ranking on transportation. I will stay on that committee, but I am meeting with our new ranking and my leader as well. And I had a discussion with the Commissioner of Transportation just a couple weeks back. They had conducted a survey among commuters to understand what the change in COVID is going to mean and bring. So I think we really need to look at those results and look at our integrated plan. There is a tremendous amount of work that is currently ongoing, some significant projects underway. If you go up towards Hartford, the whole interchange for I-84, which is one of, I think, the top 3 priority projects, is well underway, huge progress being made, as is the Mixmaster in Waterbury. And ongoing road maintenance has also been occurring, particularly when there was less traffic because of COVID. So it's certainly something that we're going to be looking at. I think we need to look at priorities. I think we need to ensure that the funding that is supposed to go there actually does go there. That would have prevented a lot of funding issues, that we currently see now. So we'll know more in the coming days, particularly. I just received last night 2 64-page reports on the fiscal accountability report. I haven't been through them all in depth, but will certainly by the end of this week. So it's certainly something important for our state, and we'll be looking at it.
Do you happen to know what the percentage of deficiencies are in our bridges? I'm pretty sure it's pretty high. It's something like 40%, I think, of our bridges are rated deficient in some way. So I don't know exactly how you can say that we don't have any situations like the Mianus River Bridge. Nobody expected that bridge to fall either. It was inspected.
Actually, there was a lot of indications related to that bridge, and the word deficient, I think, is one that is used, but as lay people, what we would interpret that to be is horrible. There is in no way a risk of collapse or anything of that nature to even compare the two. So I don't have offhand, although I'd be happy to share with you the actual definitions of what those ratings mean. Because if you're not a highway engineer, what they mean in the highway work is very different from what those terms may mean to us in a layman's world of not being highway engineers.
Doug, I'd just like to touch on this subject since you mentioned the Manus River Bridge. I was one of the first responders as a firefighter with the Coscow Volunteer Fire Department the night that bridge collapsed. And that was devastating. That bridge did have structural deficiencies to it, as in the rust and the hanging pins. But when they're talking about deficiencies today on the road, we have our bridges, one of the deficiencies, it's not wide enough. There's not a bike lane. The reflective striping isn't to the national traffic safety standards, guardrail height, fencing. It could be a number of things. It doesn't mean that they're in dangerous condition or they're damaged. It's just they're deficient in a certain way. Not enough lighting. Could be some trees covering it, shadowing it for icy spots during like frost in the morning and stuff like that. So, there is deficiencies out there in everything, but they're not dangerous situations that we have with these bridges that we did have with the Manus River Bridge.
I hope you're right.
Cindy has her hand up. Then she had a
Yep,
follow-up.
Cindy, go right ahead.
Thanks, guys. Just a follow up on transportation and talking about the rail system, et cetera. I understand that the actual percentage of people actually using our rails is down significantly. And yet there really hasn't been any adjustment for usage and lowering the cost of that rail system, in proportion to the amount of people that are actually using it. So personally, I look at that as a waste issue that should be addressed and maybe something that should be followed up on and really looked at. I understand people use it as a commuting mechanism, but it's down so far that we shouldn't be running all the trains that we're running at the rate that we are running them. It is simply a waste of money and resources. Just a comment.
Anybody want to touch on that?
I don't necessarily disagree. I think what we need to also evaluate is what are the implications of being able to bring service back once, if our economy, when we recover, if there are, increased commuting patterns, we just need to be able to address those. It's a real good point and something I think that we're all currently at least talking about.
Yeah, you certainly don't want to lose the people, because without the people, you can't operate the railroad. But, do you really need to run that many trains? I mean, it's an excellent point. It's a good question. How do we take care of the folks that we're going to need when the economy opens up and the commuters start going, but yet we don't run the trains and waste all that time and energy now. So it certainly should be explored. It may be one of the downsides to the legislator not being in session for this long, is that as we come back in, we are allowed to start asking some of these questions now and maybe providing the oversight that's necessary. I mean, that's how it works. Right, Laura?
It does, Dave.
All right. Anything else, Cindy? No? Okay. I'm going to call on Byron. Byron, he sent us an email asking us about the nursing homes with COVID and all of that. So I don't know if he wants to talk on it or just want us to answer your reply, let everybody know what you're thinking.
You're muted, Byron.
Okay, thank you. If you can address those questions, because I know I had a couple there. I was just concerned about our nursing homes and the individuals there, but my primary question, and there were some sub-questions, was basically, would the legislature be looking at plans to protect the residents and the staffs of these nursing homes and other long-term care, and what are the things they'll be looking at? Recently, I had a friend who lost her mother, but the key thing was they were able to be with her virtually until the end. That had not been the case. Now that is something that's happening within Connecticut. So my concerns are just what do you think we need to be doing and will be addressing to protect those residents as well as PPE for the staff members?
Yeah. Listen, I just have some general comments on that. I think it's outrageous what we've done to our assisted living and nursing homes in the beginning of the pandemic. I feel these people are still not protected. I don't know if we have a good enough plan for them now, providing training and the personal protection equipment they all need. And also the social emotional needs of some of the residents there who haven't seen their families in a long time. This is one of the areas that I wish the governor would do more, or at least we as a legislator should get together and really try to help and figure out what we could do for these folks and these facilities, because it's been a tragedy what's going on in our nursing homes and our assisted living homes.
Good. Thank you. I'll stop there.
Okay.
We have to figure out, and listen, I'm just going to say this broadly because we have to figure out what exactly, as we now reconvene as a legislature, right, as a group, how we provide the oversight for some of the things that maybe we thought were lacking. So we have to press our political will. We have to do it in public. And we have to figure out a way to get the questions answered and maybe get everybody together to get some better ideas on how to protect these folks. Because listen, we've been hearing it from day one. I'm sure Laura and Ben, I'm sure Vicky too. I mean, these people in these facilities and the families of people in these facilities have been screaming and reaching out to everybody, just frustrated about whether it was their fault or not, or if it's just the world we live in. We found that a lot of this stuff happened because people were working in multiple facilities and they were carrying the virus or what was the matter with them from one place to another and then infecting the residents there. So it certainly should be, since the majority of the fatalities have been in these type of facilities, it should really be a priority.
Thank you.
Agree wholeheartedly.
Anybody else there? Show my hand. Anybody want to ask a question, voice a concern, comment?
One other
Okay,
thing that's I'm
Lloyd?
unmuted.
Lloyd, go ahead, Byron.
One thing that Representative Delvin said, how do you prefer us staying connected to you? By email or phone? I mean, how would you like us to stay connected to you?
So there are several different ways. You can certainly directly email us. And I think we've made available, at least on the flyer for this event, our email addresses. I know that, I issue a weekly newsletter. I think Dave and Ben do something similar on our websites, and that being the state website. You can sign up for those. We can't add you. You have to sign up yourself.
Yeah, you have to ask to be part of our list. I use an email list.
There's also social media, so you can follow us on, Facebook or Instagram or Twitter. Some we're better at than others, and I don't mean that people-wise, maybe, but also just in terms of various channels. And you can also call us. So I think our phone number may be on the flyer as well. But those
What road do you live on, Byron?
Beg pardon?
What road do you live on?
I live on Princeton Drive.
So a lot of people just knock on my door. Feel free.
So Dave is your rep. There you go.
No, Byron's mine.
I'll take you, Byron, if you need it. It's okay.
Okay. Thank you.
I'll see you at Vincent's, Byron.
Okay.
So you brought that up, Byron. I was going to wait till the end to mention that question that you did have on how do we stay in contact. As we go forward, you're going to be seeing our legislative sessions being done probably like a Zoom, and it'll be like the public hearing. So probably you get on a list and they'll unmute you and you'll talk and we'll go from there. But this is the future, I think, now with COVID. Everything's going to be done from your home and, online type of situation.
Yeah.
All right, Lloyd is
Hands up out
patiently
there.
raising his hand.
I see Lloyd.
Yes, Lloyd.
I think you got to unmute Lloyd.
Okay, hello. I just want to follow up on what Byron was talking about in terms of nursing homes. And is it something that you folks are thinking about in terms of reversing the governor's executive order about civil immunity for nursing homes? Do you have any thoughts about that?
I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, now he did that by executive order.
I believe so.
So all of his, as of right now, all of his executive orders are going to expire on February 9th. That's how the system works.
Okay.
So I don't know if that protection extends to them beyond that or not. I'd have to look into that, to be blunt.
Okay. Thank you.
Rita? Rita has her hand up.
Hi, I just wanted to alert you to the fact that I did put something in the chat box. You don't have to, we don't have to discuss it now, but it refers to a pending nomination for the Teacher Retirement Board. I would love for you to support that nomination and contact the governor's office, please, to ensure that they kind of work on getting that completed as quickly as possible. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a retired educator here in Trumbull. Dave knows me.
Oh, I know you. Gladly. We're neighbors.
Thank you.
So this person was the first selectman of Simsbury? She a former educator? You're on mute. You're on mute. Oh, you got to unmute, Rita.
No, she's not. She's an attorney by training.
Okay, and you just feel very strongly that she would be good for your board?
Yes, in fact, and she is being supported by ARTC and RTHA. So I just wanted to put a plug in. Dave, I sent you an email last night, which you probably haven't seen yet, but it has all of that information as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're probably right, but I'll get to it today.
Okay.
And I appreciate you reaching out. I don't get a lot of contact for that board or people recommending, so I'll be happy to look into it. Thanks, Rita.
It's very important, you know, because our healthcare, as you know, or I know you know, because I've told you a million times, because we don't get, so many of us don't get Social Security and many are not eligible for Medicare. I happen to be not in that group because I worked for 24 years outside of education before I went into education. However, it's just really important that we have really strong advocates on that board for educators.
Sorry, I'm at my office in Hartford and people are walking by and waving. I apologize. But no, Rita, I appreciate you. I definitely look into that. Absolutely. I'm happy to support anybody that the folks who are affected by it think would be a strong advocate for that. You're muted again. Okay, Ben, I don't see anybody waving.
Anybody else? Did we get anything in the chats? I see Doug had his hand up there.
So
If nobody else has a question, I just have a few suggestions for legislative action.
Yeah.
You know, one thing is I come from North Carolina. I'm an NC State graduate, and NC State has always been an amazing university as far as incubators for businesses and spinning off companies and generating thousands of jobs in North Carolina and bringing in a lot of revenue. A lot of the companies that are in the research triangle down there, you know, came out of, you know, professors at NC State, the work that they were doing. You know, there's billion-dollar companies that have come out of that. I was just wondering if there's anything that the state legislature can do to get our great universities to work together and to do more of that type of work to help the state, help in economic development. You know, we've got some of the finest universities, Yale, we've got UConn is a good university, we've got others. But I just don't know that I see them doing what I saw when I lived in North Carolina as far as universities working, you know, to incubate and help small businesses get spun off and generate economic development for the state that they're in.
You know, I really agree with what you just said. I was part of a panel last year. We were talking about trying to set up one of those incubator triangles. I guess they call it a triangle, and around Yale University and sort of a medical research thing. And what we hadn't done here in Connecticut, they were using the what's that area outside of Boston, the Route 128. They call it the Route 128 corridor out there. And they were saying that why haven't we developed anything like that in Connecticut? I thought it was very interesting. I guess it's the universities sort of get together and they all offer similar sort of course structure or so that they attract these people, and then the companies sort of gravitate towards it to hire the people after they get out of school. It's a really smart idea. You know, we had also talked about whether or not there is a requirement for UConn, what percentage should be kids from Connecticut. I know that's not part of your question, but I always thought, you know, we subsidize these universities. It really should be taking care of our kids. I was happy to support that live here, learn here thing where we provided some relief for people who stayed after graduation. So I'm certainly open. I don't know how we could, you know, I would be happy to support the universities. It's almost like it would have to be their idea to coordinate, and then the state would come in and help them subsidize or at least, you know, make it so that that area, that triangle actually happens. I wonder how much of that is really Yale and a few of the other colleges in the area, and as much of it is the state. It's an interesting conversation.
Yeah, I mean, it might be interesting if you could form a committee or something to reach out to some of the other states and see how they do it. Why has North Carolina been so successful at this? The Research Triangle Park between Raleigh and Durham and Chapel Hill is world renowned. So it seems like we've got some pretty good universities here.
Yeah,
so
I agree, actually. It's smart. We should reach out. We should form a committee. We really should, because A, we could use the economic development. The kids could use the jobs. And why not? I would be on board with that. No question. Well, I'm sure we're taking notes. I think that's a great suggestion, quite frankly.
Doug, I do see that on the small local level right now that Housatonic Community College now, I went there many years ago, but they have a whole engineering department now. They're doing manufacturing. So they're helping out students get out of school, go into these machine shops, be tool makers for Sikorsky and the other vendors around. So that is a new thing that's been happening here, I'd say, in the last 10 years. So it's smaller scope of what you were, but I think it is a start. I think the seed has been planted for that.
Yeah, I mean,
so great to see it run.
Huzi did that sort of as a partnership with private industry, that they were taking on some of these graduates and, almost like into internships or their first job after college, which I think is terrific and great. It seems to be very successful. I mean, Huzi communicates this with us all the time. But I think what Doug is talking about is something a little bit larger and maybe multiple institutions. And it's an interesting idea. A conversation that was started last year pre-COVID, we were starting to talk about these triangles or these clusters or whatever it is. I think it's a worthwhile discussion for sure.
It goes hand in hand. I think it's a great idea, and I support looking at it further to have a more integrated approach. I think they've been one off. So Yale has been doing things obviously in the healthcare space. Sacred Heart has dedicated most of the XGE facility for an incubators hub, but that is more of a private collection or coordination with SHU. The other thing that we need to make sure that we adhere to are business-friendly policies at a state level. Part of the reason that Afinian paid, over, I think, $25 million to leave our state is because of these inconsistencies about how we, offer carrots and pull them away. And, we've got to have some stability and reliability so that as these businesses grow too, they'll stay here and help turn our economy around.
Yeah, for sure.
I just had one other thought too. I have a friend up at the Center for Economic Analysis, and for years he's been saying that our spending cap is hampering our ability to bring in federal funds, because apparently the spending cap does not distinguish between where the revenue is coming from, and so federal funds that come in go towards hitting that spending cap, and it would seem like we would want to kind of rework that spending cap so that money that's coming from outside and is going towards good projects should not really hit against our spending cap. So
talking about the one we instituted in 17, 18, because I know we changed a whole lot of the policies. We did the volatility cap, we did a spending cap, because I believe that spending cap, was that the one that was part of the income tax that was passed in the early 90s that was never instituted? I'm not sure, because then we did one we did that cost sharing one for the hospital tax, and I mean, that didn't work out at all. So I didn't know which cap you were referring to.
Yeah, well, I think there was a spending cap put in, I don't know, probably in the last 10 years, that basically, limits how much the state can spend, and we hit it. And sometimes we hit it because federal funds, are actually coming in. And I've actually, heard that sometimes state legislators don't want to, they'd rather have local money that they have total control over versus federal money that may have strings attached to it that have to go to highway fund projects or whatever. But I don't know all the details of it, but it's my understanding that Fred Karstensen up at the Center for Economic Analysis has looked at this, and he seems to feel like there's about $1 billion that we're not bringing back from Washington that we could access if we would do some changes to our spending cap.
I'll take a look into what you're suggesting. I know, Laura, I was on finance and revenue in the past. I'm not sure, nobody's come to me and said, hey, we applied for this pocket or pool of money and some policy has prevented us from getting it. Let's say it doesn't happen, clearly.
I'll see if I can find out more information on it too.
Because if there was some big pocket of cash that we weren't getting, I think the legislator would act swiftly to sort of go out there and get it. But
okay.
But listen, I'm open to anything, to be blunt. There were some questions in the chat that I was getting text because we can't see it either, apparently. I don't know who asked about the recall provision. There is no recall provision for our governor. I think it would require an amendment to the Constitution. We also don't have essentially a referendum provision either here in Connecticut. You could argue for or against that one any way you want. What was the other one, Laura? Did you see the other one? They're coming up very small on my phone.
It was a question on the vaccine distribution. They understand it's going to be a priority windfill for distribution. And do you actually have a plan on how the vaccines will be distributed? And will we partner?
Priority waterfall, was that like a typo possibly? Was that the word that was meant to be said?
I don't know.
Priority waterfall for distribution. Listen, you got to leave that one up to the experts, I think, right? The vaccine, give it to who people think need it the most. I would advocate for teachers to be as important as anybody else, just so that they're protected in the schools and maybe the kids could safely go back to school, which would be great.
I think all those details are really still being worked out, particularly depending on which vaccine you get, because of course the Pfizer vaccine has certain requirements that our hospitals are equipped to be able to deal with in terms of its storage and handling. I would anticipate that our pharmacies would also get involved at some level or another, because the governor has just sort of eased restrictions on pharmacists to be able to administer vaccinations to kids between the ages, I think it's 10 and 18. Currently, they're restricted on adults only. So there are things that are being put in place to prepare for, some, I don't mean this to be interpreted in any bad way, massive vaccination programs where the ability and capacity is there to be able to meet the demand.
Right. I think that was from Johnson. I think, was that you, Glenn Johnson? If you wanted to chime in and maybe clarify if we didn't.
I got Liz waving her hand. I think she wants to put in on this.
Okay, Liz, feel free. You're on mute though, Liz.
Be unmuted.
Hi, sorry, I didn't know how to raise my hand. I was the one that asked the question. It actually wasn't about how it was or who would get the vaccine. It's about how we're going to distribute it. So are we partnering with CVS or Walgreens? And are we bringing in extra staff to get this vaccine rolled out and distributed?
Oh, you wanted to know the mechanics of it, is what you're saying. Like how?
Correct.
Okay, that's a good question. You know what? I must say that I have sort of left this up to the medical professionals, but we certainly could ask and get that out to you.
I do believe we read something yesterday that the governor is going to allow CVS and Walgreens and pharmacies to get into that process of distributing it. So they're going to be a partner in this, I would say.
Okay.
I wonder how they're going to keep it, just as a side conversation, Ben, because it has to be stored at such a low temperature. I wonder how CVS and Walgreens, when they provide them the vaccines, are they going to provide them the coolers to go with it? It was just an interesting.
Yeah, I
I have no
know.
idea, but
I don't know. We'll get there. Little
Yeah,
steps.
CVS
Yeah,
will
look.
be one of the partners for sure, and they were an early partner in terms of some testing. But then it goes, I don't know the details between the Moderna vaccine and the Pfizer vaccine, if they, distinguish between one being in a hospital setting and the other at drugstores, to Dave's, point. I think those details have yet to be worked out, but they are putting, if you will, the infrastructure in place so that there is, readiness in terms of, I think CVS is hiring more staff.
yeah,
They're really
see
trying
that
to prepare.
just be transparent though. I'd vote for that to be out in the open and let's have those discussions so everybody knows what's going on. It's an interesting topic for sure, Liz.
Yeah, and then I guess if you guys are following up, my other question was, how are we defining the critical workforce? I know the portal.gov defined the other populations, but the critical workforce was in tier 2, and just who are they?
Okay, anybody? All right. So as far as I see it, it's going to be the doctors, the nurses, the nursing home people. They're going to be the number one to receive it. Then it's going to go on to first responders, fire, police, EMS, the people that deal with the patients every day. And then I'm not sure how it's going to be laid out after that. I'm sure it's going to be a lot of vaccines all at once, and I'm guaranteed there will be a shortage. So people will want, and then they'll put that whole who's more important than the next guy. So there'll be like a little bit of stalemate there.
I'd like to see the teachers in with the first responders. My personal opinion, but
yeah.
All right.
They're with the masses every day. They got a lot of kids in front of them every day.
Well, I mean, we've
coming and going.
to learn what an important job it is, right? Let's be honest. Anybody else? Anything else on chat? Oh, what is Kat sending me?
Anybody else? Show of hands.
I guess there's a draft emergency
Raise
response.
your hand.
So I guess we could forward that out. 77 pages. Anybody else? Cindy, shocker. That's it. What's up?
Am I still off mute?
No, you're
still there. You want to keep going? Oh, we muted her.
Maybe we could get her email address and forward her that report, the draft report that I just received from our office. Liz, if you want to type in your email address, we can forward that over to you. Okay. It was a function and a mass vaccination plan. I guess it's a first draft from the state of Connecticut. So we could review it and see if it meets, if you have any questions on it. Cool. All right. Sorry. Go ahead, Sin. Hit unmute.
Oh, it allowed me. It wouldn't allow me before. It told me I
We
couldn't
try
do
to
it.
control you.
Oh, David, that is not possible. Okay, just a follow up on the incubation, and I'm sorry that Senator Wong left because he could have spoken to that as far as Fairfield University, because when I worked for him, I went to several events where they had the job incubation. They actually have a program there, and I think what David and Doug are talking about, which is awesome, would actually force the universities to work together on that process. Unfortunately, I don't see a lot of that going on. They tend to compete more than come together on things like that. So I would love to see that as a follow-up to Barbara and education and funds. I wholeheartedly agree with her. My son went back to university this past semester with the thought that only 2 of his classes would be online, but the majority would be in person, which made it worth it. And what it ended up being is all of his classes ended up being online. So I paid for housing and food and things that I didn't do because he could have just as easily done it from the room that I already pay for with my mortgage. So I think there is a factor here, a fairness factor to those of us that are paying really high, even as residents, cost for our kids to go to school and not really getting what it is that we paid for. And, when it comes to cars and things like that, we have lemon laws. We should have protections when it comes to things like this as well. As far as spending caps go, I think what we first need to do before we start looking at ways to allow more money in is to make sure that the money that comes into our state and for our budget, whether we apply for the federal funds or for elsewhere, is to make sure that those funds actually end up where it is that they are supposed to be. For years and years, we collected tolls for roads, and those monies went to something else except for roads. Okay. If we have money that is designated for specific projects and for specific line items, they need to stay within those projects and those line items and stop getting shifted from one place to another, and stop using the general fund as an excuse to utilize funds for things that they were not designated for, i.e. things like teachers' pensions funneling through the general fund and never actually making it to the areas that they need to do. So until we fix that problem, I don't know that we can actually apply for federal funds and other things that we should be eligible for, but that we're not, because quite frankly, and I'm going to tell you, and Laura has heard me say this to the Transportation Committee, if the state can't be trusted with the money, they shouldn't be getting it. And that's exactly the way I feel about it. So until you fix the problem up in Hartford with spending and making sure that funds go exactly where it is that they're supposed to go, we shouldn't be getting anything more. Period.
Well, I may agree with some of your points, and the state certainly can't be trusted with the money, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't be trying to get money that's available to us from the federal government. And if I am open to any discussion if we're impeding that process. So, you know, you may be right technically, but I don't see why we wouldn't try to get money that would actually help us. I mean, Connecticut can use it. We're certainly a donor state. We don't get as much back as we should. And,
absolutely. I agree with that. We don't get back what it is that we are due.
More federal money.
Absolutely. We don't get back what it is that we are due. But if we're not going to use it properly, we should.
I agree with you. The schools should be treated like any other business. If you don't get what you paid for, you should get your money back. Most of these universities have plenty of money. I think that the conversation about that, the competition, or what you're saying about the universities, I am confident that Doug and now Mia is talking about something different, something a little bit bigger. It was a really interesting meeting. This was about a year ago, about this incubator, this triangle, and about getting all these universities on the same page where it's mutually beneficial. I
would love to see it, because at Fairfield University, I think it's very, very successful.
Listen, I think the Connecticut university system is really unbelievable. I at times have problems with UConn. It sort of acts separately from everybody else. I wish it didn't. You know, I also think we should be taking care of our Connecticut kids first. You know, I have that sort of impression where if some kid goes through Trumbull High and does a great job, he should, you know, not get, or he or she should not get beat out for a spot at UConn because somebody from somewhere else wanted it. I always thought it should sort of be a Connecticut first centric thing. So, I mean, but that's another topic.
All right. Did I see a hand up there, Ariana? Did you have your hand up? No.
Look at that.
Okay. No more questions.
I had a couple of good suggestions, I thought.
Yep.
That's what I was looking for. I have a litany of things that I'm proposing, but I came away with a couple of decent suggestions, and then a recommendation to look into the retirement board, which I hadn't done before, which I'll be interested in reading about that candidate and the process. So if there's anything else, my email, I'm pretty available, but feel free to either sign up for my newsletter, which is actually, if you respond to that email, it comes right to me. I get a lot of the responses, or just email us directly. I mean, we're pretty, I try, and I know Ben and Laura do too, to be as available as I can. It's tough, you know, with everybody has a life, and now with COVID, it makes everything a little bit more difficult, but we're happy. And I really am happy to put forward even proposals that maybe I don't necessarily personally agree with. I feel it's my responsibility as a representative to put it out there, so at least you could talk about it or advocate for it or write a letter or maybe even get you a hearing. I mean, that's how our process works. Right now, we don't even have to have a fully vetted law. We just have to put forth a what's the concept. Thanks, guys. A concept. It could be one sentence long, and it's enough so that you could speak to it. If you feel it's important to you and it's something that you want to say, then I'm happy to put it forward whether I'm on board with it or not, and allow you to have your day in court per se, or your day in front of the committee. So if there's anything
Well
that's
said, Dave. What's our committee deadline or our bill deadline? Is it like January
They haven't done that yet, Laura.
I don't know.
10th?
We haven't
Sometime
done
in
it.
January, but
Goes
It can't
quick.
be January. It can't be. It's too soon. It's got to be February sometime.
all right,
We're gonna get sworn in on the 6th. It can't be the 10th. You know what I'm saying?
right. So it'd be later, but I think it is anyway. The point being,
Yeah.
we still have several weeks that if something does come to you, or you're maybe thinking about something but haven't quite formulated it, please, reach out to any of us. And if if you reach out to me and I'm not your rep, I'll forward that over to Dave. We do all work together, but we
We
each
do.
represent different constituents in the different parts of town. And it's, just don't think that it's too late because you missed it today.
Oh, no, we're just getting started. We
Yeah.
haven't missed anything. Yep.
We do try and get to everybody's emails. Sometimes the topic comes up and we'll get, 50 emails or 200 on it. They get in a list and we read through them, but we do try and get back to everybody. And with that, I want to thank everybody for taking the time out today to come on here and meet with us. I can't wait for everybody to be back, maybe at Pizza and Politics or a coffee at Best Edibles. But this is really nice. I think this is good for now, but I do want to be back in the room with everybody.
Me too, no doubt. I thought this would okay. I think if we do it again, we'll sort of open up the chat. We'll figure that out so that we could see it in real time. Maybe people could ask faster, better questions. And if there's an idea that you want us to put forward for you, please let us know. We'll be happy to do it. That's it.
Thanks, everyone.
Good to see you, Rita.
Yeah.
Be well, dear.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.